All right, so what that song that you were just listening to is known as it's the Marines Hymn, and it is the second line in that you'll notice says, or you may have noticed that it says the shores of Tripoli, and what we're looking at today is where that line comes from. The shores of Tripoli. What are they talking about? And well, what we're talking about is war with Barbary pirates. Yes, you heard me right, pirates. We're talking about real life pirates and piracy on the Mediterranean Sea and other places as well, but primarily on the Mediterranean. And we're going to be focusing on Tripoli, which is right here. You can see this is Tripoli. It's present-day Libya. But there were some other Barbary pirates, what are known as the Barbary Pirates, the country of Tunis, Algiers, and Morocco. Now, we had a treaty with Morocco, and we'd had some difficulty with some of these others, but what we're going to focus on is the war that we have with Tripoli and with the pirates of Tripoli, or the Tripolitan pirates specifically. So here we go. So what does this all work? How does this all work? Piracy. Well, the Barbary pirates, what it's all about is paying tribute. And for decades, perhaps centuries, countries had been paying off these different countries paying tribute. And basically, you pay them off, and if you don't pay them off, if your country doesn't pay them a sufficient amount, then they attack any ships that bear your flag. And so the United States has been under the protection for a long time, as being part of the British Empire, and has been under the protection of the British Navy, the most powerful navy in the world. And there was even times then when they found it more efficient to actually pay off these different countries than to actually fight. But for a long time, the United States, or the colonies, were under the protection of the British. Well, once they're in their own country, they have to pay off. They have to pay their tribute to basically sail these seas freely or not. And they have not been able to come to an agreement with Tripoli. And so these pirates are the scourge of the Mediterranean. They capture merchant ships, and once they capture your ship, they take the people that are on the ship, they enslave them, they sell or ransom them off back to the country if the country is willing to pay them, or the family members perhaps will pay. Then they'll do that. Otherwise, they sell them into slavery. The one kind of caveat to that is if you promise to convert to Islam, then you would not be sold into slavery, and you would have a much greater amount of freedom. And so that's kind of the process. And the United States has decided, you know what, maybe we're not going to keep paying these, and that's kind of what's going to start this war here. And so we've been paying Tripoli, but Tripoli is now starting to demand more money. And Jefferson says, you know what, we're not going to pay tribute anymore. We're not going to continue this. And so Tripoli declares war on the United States. And the United States responds with a few different things. One, with some naval battles. They send their navy there to the Mediterranean to deal with this. It's a three-pronged war. They also embargo. They basically use their navy to set up a kind of a stopping all trade from coming in, try to stop all trade from coming into Tripoli. And then they also have a ground attack from Egypt. So they go into Egypt, land into Egypt, and then move into Tripoli. And so that's where we get the shores of Tripoli. So let's look at kind of the area and the setup here. So this picture shows you the port of Tripoli today. So this is actually a satellite image that was from several years ago now, but this is basically what that port looks like today. And here we see kind of what it may have looked like in 1804. And so you can see actually most of it is actually not connected like the previous slide shows. Today, this area is all been kind of filled in and is land, and so it's all, and you can kind of see the protection that these smaller islands provide to make for a pretty good port. And so that's the harbor there in Tripoli, and that's where a lot of what we're going to look at takes place today. And actually, you can see here This is the USS Philadelphia, which is burning, which in a crazy sense is actually a huge victory for the United States. So what we're going to look at here, we're not going to look at all of the different fighting that took place over Tripoli, but really focus on one particular event that is pretty heroic and goes down as one of the most, I think, one of the more interesting endeavors by our military, and it happens way back in the early 1800s. And Stephen Decatur here is a young, he's not even a captain yet. He's made captain for this particular mission because he's the one that's going to be captaining this ship. But basically in the process of trying to enforce the embargo on Tripoli, the USS Philadelphia gets stuck. And the captain of that, Captain Bainbridge, if I'm remembering correctly, gives the ship up, and he and his crew are captured, and the country, they've lost the USS Philadelphia, which is one of their 6 frigates, their first 6 really large vessels, and so this is kind of like the cream of the crop of Navy ships. So today, in today's terms, this would be like losing an aircraft carrier. The most expensive and important ships in the Navy at the time, perhaps maybe only second to submarines. But in other words, what we're talking about is very expensive and important ship, and we've only got 6 of them, and now this one's lost. And this is a big deal. And so what happens is it's been caught and captured in the harbor of Tripoli, and Stephen Decatur takes a handful, well, a little more than a handful, but a few men on a small ship called the Intrepid, and they try to basically look like just a trading vessel, a merchant ship. And as they approach, they're in great danger, and they slowly approach, and what's going to happen? Are they going to be caught? Are they going to blow the ship up? Are they going to be successful? And obviously from this picture you can see they're successful. And so as they approach, they actually have somebody that is pretending to be the captain of the ship that speaks kind of the lingua franca of the period, and says, hey, we need to tie up to your ship because of for the night, and they say approach. And so just as they approach, they're pulling in, and as soon as they get close, they're kind of found out, but it's too late. And the Americans jump on board the ship, and they use their swords, they use their guns, and really their swords and knives and things of that nature, and they quickly kill a lot. Some surrender, a few jump overboard, a few surrender, but those that surrender are quickly killed, and then they go about setting this thing on fire. They catch it on, they put all these different, they're basically going all below board. They're making sure that the guns are going to be destroyed. They use the guns to make sure the vessel is destroyed. They load them up, and they set the thing ablaze, and they get out of there. And Captain Decatur is the last one off the ship, and he jumps off. They get away. They're almost sucked back in. The flames are so big and violent that's the wind is pulling their smaller vessel closer to the ship, and they finally break free. And the Philadelphia just explodes in fire. The cannons fire off as a result of the heat, and they escape. And so they've destroyed the Philadelphia. They've kept the Tripolitans from keeping this ship, and it's a big victory for something that was such a tragic defeat in having to lose the Philadelphia. So eventually, what happens is the Marines attack, or they go into Egypt. They move in from Egypt. They capture Dern, the city of Dern in Tripoli. The embargo is continued, and because of those two things, because of all this, Tripoli decides, we'll sign a peace treaty. The Americans are released for a small ransom, $60,000, not really that small of a ransom, and American ships would not be attacked by Tripoli anymore. So the results of these heroics and of the Americans really showing, hey, you know what, we're done taking and paying these fees. You're gonna have to stop us. We're gonna continue to trade, and we're gonna deal with you. And so America's military becomes more respected. The U.S. showed it could fight together as Americans, not as different people. This Navy is kind of one of the first places where you've got people from different places fighting together, and so on the same side against the foes. And so it really shows that as well, that Americans will fight together as Americans, and it was a success, and they no longer had to continue paying these fees to the Barbary Pirates, the tribute to the Barbary Pirates.